in progress.
Oh, that's cute.
Showings before showings earlier today for you, or no?
No, I
No,
was
okay.
in helping Lauren and then played
Okay.
tennis for
Oh, that's
an hour and a half. Played
Yeah.
and, I was still in tennis. And I'm used to anybody as old as I am running around a tennis court.
Mm.
Pick up lessons from Charlie someday.
Okay. Hold on. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. The camera's on here now too.
Okay.
So I don't know how you want to handle it of like here, up there for doing
Oh, the
the
camera's on too?
on this.
Yes. So would over here be a possibility? Or
Sure.
okay. Nice. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Coming.
Cool. And I think I did see Debbie somewhere as well.
I'll go grab her. She'll
Okay.
talk to
That's
Larry.
Sounds good. Okay.
Come on.
Where is my oh, I guess I have to
Yeah,
go
you
through
would
here.
do from there.
All right, welcome everyone. So these classes I've been pulling, basically Keller Williams designed them from this book Shift. So I think everyone has heard, I know Wendy's a big fan of that book. Very important book to read as we start to get more into a buyer's market. It's not there yet. I don't know how you guys feel about the market. We're basically leveling off right now. However, the market always goes through economic shifts from a seller's market to a buyer's market. So, hey, how you doing? So, not technically there yet. Uh, the objective of today's class is we want to go over the perspective of pricing strategies. Want to be able to study our market better. Handing out these packets here. Approach our sellers with the right attitude, the right mindset, and we want to get the right pricing. We want to manage ourselves in a buyer's market as best as possible. Benefit of taking a class like this.
Hey, Adam, can you talk closer to the something? I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can move the laptop a little closer here. Sorry, I was away handing out papers there. So you'll probably be able
Okay,
to
that's good.
closer. All right, cool. Thanks, Dawn. So the benefit of taking a class like this is you will gain an advantage over so many other real estate agents because back when the last shift happened, meaning from a seller's market to a buyer's market, 48% of real estate agents ended up getting wiped out. And we'll talk more about that because with the shift, there's more of a different mindset that you need to get into on how you approach sellers, how you approach buyers. I mean, the conversations are a lot different. There's much more expected out of you as a real estate agent. So let's embrace this opportunity as, hey, we know so many agents aren't going to be able to hang with us. Let's take advantage of it. Let's get more knowledge. Let's practice. Let's get good. If you guys need to take a bathroom break at any time, restrooms are out there. I just want to make sure you're welcome to leave at any time. We will get into activities. There will be points where I ask you if you have any questions. So feel free at any point. You don't have to feel prisoner to a class, just so you guys know. So let's get more into perspective here. So these were the slides from a national standpoint for the inventory accumulation. So we've heard of that before, the inventory accumulation rate or the absorption rate. Anything from 1 to 4 months is a seller's market. Anything from 5 to 7 is a balanced market. More than 7 is going to be a buyer's market. Yellow line is the balanced market. You see in 06, you exceeded, or you got into a balanced market, and then 07, there was a span from 07 to 11, 5 years there where we were in an economic shift. It was a buyer's market. Then it went down, and we've been in a seller's market for quite some time now. As you see there, 2.3 in 2021. And again, 48% of real estate agents, meaning heading into 07, at the end of 2011 into 12, 48% of the real estate agents left the industry. So quite the opportunity. Mortgage rates. Today, I think they're around 6 1/8 mortgage rates. You look from 1972 to 2021, 2.96 at the end of last year. They're at 6 1/8 today. Look at if you look at the last 10 years or 20 years for that matter, I think it only exceeded 6 or got close to 6 where it is today, maybe like in the early 2000s. So this is different. This is why everyone's sort of waking up right now. It's because of these interest rates. Are you all feeling the same way about them? Okay, great. All right. So perspective on the pricing strategy. So listings, here's the main thing. When it comes to a buyer's market, it's all about pricing. 80% of your marketing is going to be around how well you're suggesting the pricing to your sellers. That's going to be the key thing. Now there's a new role. There's a new role as listing agents in a buyer's market. And they're going to look to us as being more valued than ever before. For pricing strategies, market knowledge, buyers, fiduciary commitment, knowledge of financing options, negotiation skills. So from any of the experienced agents in the room, when you look at a list like this, where you're going to be really respected and sought out around these skills, what comes to mind, or what do you think is really going to shine that you're going to have to show off when you're sitting in front of a seller or a buyer? Do any of these stand out?
Fiduciary commitment.
Okay.
I think market knowledge.
Market knowledge? Okay.
Yeah.
How's that different from today? Let's say in the past 2 years.
Well, I think that, my perspective is that, most sellers, most homeowners are slow to react and understand the market shift. Once, even though there's a lot written and a lot in the news, I think people sometimes tend not to think that it affects them directly.
Okay.
And I think that, I think that we've been undervalued, frankly, in this market, because most people feel, that we can, put a house in the MLS and do nothing, and we're going to end up basically sorting through 15 offers. Doesn't matter if the pictures are high quality. It doesn't matter if you take extra steps to market the house. It really almost doesn't matter what you do. And I think that understanding the shift is going to require agents to have a better understanding of what's happening in specific markets, and it's very, as we know, very local, hyper local.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if I think people, there are going to be more and more houses that are listed with the wrong agent, and they're going to sit on the market for a long time. And I think it's going to increase our value proposition in general.
Right. I like that. Yeah, I really think that, like, I think of all the companies that have started up since, like, call it like the past 5 years. You think of, I hate to name names, but like Hauser, for example. You think about these companies that offer very low fees to a seller, and you think about all these things that we need to possess as agents, as a fiduciary, and it's almost like we're worth the commissions in a type of market like this because they really need our knowledge and our expertise. Where I really don't see those tech prop companies really surviving so much longer because they're not going to be able to bring that value right here.
But I also think like in this market, you've seen listings, I'm sure we all have, where they put a house on, and sometimes expensive houses with, it looks like half a dozen, maybe exterior iPhone pictures to follow. And the house goes under agreement in 3 days, and the agent like basically has saved the cost of, investing in like what you would like just kind of a minimum level of service, which is at least investing in high quality, photos and video, whatever. I mean, I think that, that's as the market changes, that's not going to be possible to get away with that anymore.
Sure. No, I agree. So this is Shift Tactic 7 that we're covering today, pages 135 to 156. And I like what they say here in 138, what Gary says. He says, a market shift absolutely underscores the importance of pricing and exposes cavalier agents who don't give it researched attention and serious thought. The most successful agents become masters of pricing and masterful in getting their sellers to trust the findings and act on them. Do you guys know any cavalier agents that are out there that may have had a killing just starting 3 years ago and don't know what to expect coming up? It's going to be a different change for sure. All right, let's move on here. So what opportunity, if we are moving into a buyer's market, let's say we landed into a buyer's market, what opportunities are there for an agent? What comes to mind for opportunities?
Expired listings.
Expired listings. So in a seller's market, the opportunity would be listings. Absolutely. Listings are always going to be, and if you think of the core foundational model in the millionaire real estate agent book, do you guys know that core foundational model that they talk about? It's a triangle, and it's leads, listings, and leverage. Exactly. So I'm moving to the board, those on Zoom, so forgive me if you can't hear me. So leads, listings, leverage. It always begins and starts with leads. Listings are the high leverage, maximum earning opportunity, and then leverage. Doing more in less time. So when we approach the business, we want to prospect listings because listings are that high leverage, maximum earning opportunity. In a buyer's market, you think, okay, well, the opportunity would be around buyers. If we could find a ready and willing buyer that's motivated, pumped up, ready to go, because they're the ones that are hard to find. Because if you think about the supply and demand, the sellers exceed the buyers. However, if we approach it through the fundamental principle model, the goal is, and the opportunity for agents is to sell. You want to find willing buyers and qualified buyers through a correctly priced listing, if that makes sense. So a correctly priced listing, you want to market it to find qualified and willing buyers. What comes to mind for marketing for being the most effective way of finding qualified buyers in a buyer's market through a correctly priced listing?
Open house.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's definitely one. It's not costly at all, right? And a properly marketed house, per the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, will yield 2 buyers if it's properly marketed. 100%. So what do you think the opportunities would be for a seller in a buyer's market? Opportunities for a seller in a buyer's market.
They're kind of minimizing their losses.
Okay. Like the carrying costs? Is that what you're basically
No, but let's say they're going to sell for less. If they sell for less sooner, it could be better than selling for less later. You
Okay.
know, that they carry it for an extra 3 months kind of thing.
The market you sell is the market you buy. And if there's an opportunity, you think about those move-up buyers that sell at a time where it is a buyer's market, then maybe they get beat up on price, the house of their dreams that they always wanted, there's an opportunity to get that, right? So there's always an opportunity for that, for a seller that's always wanted the dream house.
All the time in the 2007, you know, that crazy market, we tell people, if you're selling a $400,000 house to buy a $600,000 house and they both depreciated by 10%, you're actually better off. Because the more expensive house is, you know, 10% less than what it would have
Right.
been for obviously a higher number
Right.
than the one you're selling.
Absolutely. Stuff. All right, just to shift gears, and this, I wanted to make sure, these slides are gonna pop up more often, and when we do classes here, it's just, there's 3 types of people that attend classes. There's the prisoner, the vacationer, and the explorer. I just want this to bring this to everyone's attention. The prisoner is someone who thinks that they have to be here. Maybe someone's forcing them to be here. The vacationer is someone who spends time chatting, listening. They return late from breaks and lunch, not purposeful in learning their goals. And then you have the explorer. The explorer is going to listen attentively. They're going to ask meaningful questions and contribute to compelling ahas. They're going to take notes in their manual for future reference. And they're going to respect the different learning styles and opinions of others. Hopefully everyone is going to stay in that explorer column. So So just going forward as Keller Williams agents, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that. We hope that you stay in that lane. So now we're going to get into studying the market here. So you had mentioned earlier, Marty, that there's going to be something influencing a seller for what they believe in with their knowledge of the market. They're either going to listen to the national hype or they're going to listen to their friends and family. And what we need to do is we really need to own the idea of being the local economist, telling the story at the local level. That's the only thing. And for the class that I taught last month, we were in Shift Tactic 9. We were talking about how to create buyer urgency. And in that, there was 3 categories of a buyer, of how you determined if they were ready to buy. They were able, they were ready, and they were willing. And willing pretty much meant that they didn't have any fearful or scarcity mindset of the market and listening to other things other than the actual real estate agent that they hired. And for them to overcome that reluctance, it was for us to be the more local economist and to tell the story from a local perspective. You got to let that do a lot of the heavy lifting. Of course, we always got to analyze the MLS. We have to take time to study and internalize the statistics. Got to choose the numbers and statistics from the MLS. Choose a partner from your team, market center, with whom you can practice the numbers and meet weekly. Hey, Debbie, do you mind? Listen, Lower Mayfield, I know that you like to serve Lower Mayfield. I like to serve Lower Mayfield as well. What if we met every Thursday and we looked at the coming soons and we did an analysis on if it was priced correctly?
Sounds good.
Cool. So having a partner where you can do that once a week in a particular area is practice. That's practice. One idea of getting practice in. You want to take the shifting market into consideration when evaluating comparables. Get the big picture. Buyers will prioritize the deal rather than the area. All right. So now we're going to get into our first panel here. So Marty, you can come up here. Marty's our first panelist here. All right. So to get a better idea of how we should prepare ourselves with knowledge of heading into a listing appointment. So Marty, first off, what areas do you primarily service?
Well, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and if you ask me, like, the key areas would be Lower Makefield, Upper Makefield, you know, Washington Crossing, Northampton, Langhorne. That's kind of a general radius.
Yes. And from what we're hearing as far as the market still staying hot, cooling off, going down, whatever, what are you seeing in those areas?
Well, that's interesting. So, you know, my own personal perspective is that because of a fundamental imbalance between, you know, like nationally anyway, there just aren't enough houses to meet the demand. And so, like, personally, I don't think the bottom's going to fall out the way that it did in the last shift that we experienced. And like literally in the last 4 or 5 days, either myself or my team had like 5 houses that went under agreement, all different price points. I had somebody that, one of my first clients that I worked with like 25 years ago was looking at a house in Newtown Grand with a significant other. 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath, corner property in Newtown Grand for $500,000, and there were 5 offers. They ended up getting it, but they didn't have to. I mean, it sounds crazy to say, they didn't have to go insanely over the asking price. And I think that if that house was on the market, 3 months ago, there would have been 15 offers, and it would have gone significantly over the asking price. And I think they were asking, I think it was like $499, and we got it basically just over 5. Virtually everybody waived inspection, so that's still going on. But there was another house on 4 Providence that somebody on my team wrote an offer, which was cash, and they were asking almost $1 million. There were multiple offers, and that when we were fortunate enough to get that also, because it was cash, they had to waive everything because there were multiple offers on that. It went like 10% over the asking price. So like if the thought is that the market is my house in Regency, we didn't have a huge number of showings, but we did get a full price offer. So again, it seems that I think the number of buyers is in my sense is that there aren't as many buyers as there were, but the prices are still like they're not. I don't think they're not dropping yet. And based on what we were going to talk about, like there's more price reductions over the last couple of weeks basically than there were in the last 2 years. I mean, that's relevant. There are more houses that are staying on the market longer than 3 days than we've seen in the last, as crazy as that is, in the last 2 years. And I think that the market where you could price something almost anywhere you want, and you're going to get multiple offers, it's going to sell in a weekend. I think those days, for the time being, are gone. That's my sense. The house really has to be priced right. And I've said this even through these crazy times that the sellers, like, it's counterintuitive, but you're better off. We all know it. I mean, this isn't any mystery to us, but you're better off pricing it low and let the market dictate where the house is going to end up, rather than trying for like some high number because, this is what my neighbor had, and then it sits on the market. And that's another house it was a house in Westover that I think the seller, did themselves a disservice because they didn't take the agent's advice and started at an unrealistic number, sat on the market for weeks on end. And again, we wrote an offer that was less than the asking price by a fair amount with inspections and everything else. And, after a month or so, they took our offer. That house would have sold for a higher number if they had listed it lower. And the market, it's a great neighborhood and it has a lot of potential. And, I think we're like, that's what we're gonna start to see more of.
It's wonky right now. It's still
very
multiple offers on homes. However, there's still a large amount of homes that are getting price reductions. Are you guys all seeing the same thing? Large amounts of price
And
reductions.
it's very house specific.
Right. So going into a listing appointment is, if we segues to my next question, what's the data for this type of client? What's the data that you're bringing to tell the story from a local level? I heard price reductions. Is it more than just comps? Like, what is market?
So my approach was always a little bit different because I was never like, I didn't usually do like the traditional CMA. I would bring some comps, but like I would bring the full multiple listing sheet so that I could, and I don't bring lots of them because I want to really focus on the difference between, features and amenities from one house to the next. And I don't usually spend like hours on that with a seller, but right now I'm bringing, I bring specific information depending on the neighborhood about like how many price reductions there are, how many houses have been on the market, as crazy as it sounds. And I talked about this with a seller. Like, I know it's crazy to say like how many houses haven't sold, in a weekend, but that's what we've just been through. It's like, we all know it. You put the house on the market, show it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then Monday, sort through 15 offers. So if you see a house even now that's been on the market for 3 weeks, it's the wrong price. And so I share that, that information, like more and more houses are on the market longer and longer. And I also always try and build the data so that I can document that the houses that are priced right, meaning start sometimes lower than what the seller's expectation is, sell for higher, they sell for more, and they sell quicker. So that, because that's the objective is to really drill into how important it is to price right and be aggressive. And sometimes that's a hard conversation. Somebody thinks they're going to get 600,000 for their house, and you say, I can appreciate that, and go through all the data and say, I think the best opportunity to get 6 or more is to be 575. Sometimes that's a tough conversation, but it makes sense.
Right. Yeah, that was the next question I was going to ask. It was pretty much, how do you get them? If someone comes out the gates and they're very headstrong about the price they want for their home, because their home's special, right? So, how do you get them into more of that reasonable zone? Is it like, it's got to be the typical objection that they give you. It's because I think that's going to be the tough conversation for a lot of agents to deal with.
I used to use this like routinely. So I'd walk into a listing appointment and I'd say, at the end, this is an old Mike Ferry script. At the end of our conversation, one of 3 things could happen. You can list with me, which I hope you will. You can decide not to list with me, which is totally fine. And the third option is I might decide not to take your listing. And any one of those 3 is absolutely fine. Totally comfortable with any of the 3. And the seller, almost 100% of the time, would say, what do you mean you won't take my, why wouldn't you want to represent me? I would get right into a discussion about the price. Here's the investment I make in trying to make sure that your house is represented properly. And at the end of the day, if we can't agree on a price that makes sense, it may be better for both of us that I just don't take the listing. And that would give me a pretty good indication. And I, again, have to get back to like the pre-listing idea that I used to do all the time, including comps, would be to send the information in advance, which we would do by email, because you can get into a conversation like very early on with a prospective seller to see whether there's going to be a total disconnect from reality about the price. And then in a market like we've been through, like you take everything, and there are agents that we all know, very, very successful agents that'll take any listing anywhere at any price. I mean, one of the top agents, Jay Spaziano, like you have a house and you say, it's worth 500,000. You say I want $1.5 million. I'll say, great, we'll list it for $1.5 million. But he's unique in that because he has so many listings, and again, one of the, as an aside, like his average days on the market is like 2.5 years, but that's a whole other conversation.
So with everything going on, like what's going on in your head? Are you going to tweak your listing appointments anyway in terms of?
Well, the conversation that I have is different.
Okay.
So like I had a listing appointment, a few weeks ago with somebody. It's a great house in Lower Makefield, and I told him at the time, I thought we could list it for 7.25 or so, 7:30, and we can't list it for that now, and they know that. I mean, I said to them as like they're probably going to downsize and maybe even rent. They're having a really hard time finding what they want, and I have said to them repeatedly, like, just so you're aware, like as you wait, the market is changing, and we're going to have to revisit the number, and they're fine with that. Like they understand completely, and for their family situation, it's more important for them. We've talked about that they find the right place first, even if it means selling for less, which they know they will. Right? This house, it's a pretty interesting house, but it needs some updating, and it has to be priced right, or it's a house that will sit on the market.
Right. Awesome. Any questions for Marty? Right, anything we talked about? If you guys have any stories recently, I've been going to a lot of you just asking if you've been having any of that seller pushback with price suggestion or not. I know Rich had shared a good story with you. You had one? Okay.
Marty, how about the comment, I need this much money?
Well,
I need it. Don't you know I need it?
Well, that's always an interesting, conversation because, you try and, we all know this also, make, kind of get the seller to understand what they need means nothing to the buyer. And it's an easier conversation if they're buying because you can flip the script and say, you know, for instance, when you go look at a house and they're asking 700 and it's worth 600 because the seller needs 700, are you going to pay 700 because you feel badly for the seller? And of course not. So, but that's another conversation. When they say they need, does that mean they need it to pay their mortgage, or, you know, because that's a whole other conversation. I think, again, fundamental difference between this shift and what happened, you know, nobody knows this for sure, but people that, if they can't pay their mortgage right now, they have equity. So it's not like they're gonna end up, you know, with a bunch of short sales and depressed properties. Like, it would behoove people that are struggling economically to keep current with their mortgage. They're better off selling their house and taking their equity than they are letting it go to, you know, distress sale.
And can I add to that? I need it. Well, what would happen if the market doesn't bring it? What happens
Yeah, that's a
to
great
your
line.
plan? Good question.
All
But it's
right.
also no different from a buyer that says, you know, we actually had this with somebody we were working with on my team that looked and said, well, the buyer paid 180,000. That was like 14 years ago. And the seller paid 180,000. They're asking, you know, whatever it is, 550. Like, man, that's crazy. That shouldn't be that expensive.
Great. Good stuff, Marty. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was only gonna add, I don't know if we're in the market yet to walk away from listings that might.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're not
I don't
there
think we're
yet.
there yet.
No, that's what I was saying. Yeah, absolutely.
And we're gonna jump in that a little later too. Well, there's the idea of taking overpriced listings. There's pros and cons to it. However, that's irrelevant to what you're saying. You're saying we're
Yeah, no, I
still in a
agree. I agree with
market where you
that. That's
can't
why I
lose
made
over
it.
listing.
Yeah, that's why I made the point. That, you know, even in the last 4 or 5 days, like virtually everything that we're involved with, all different price points, from, you know, a 2-bedroom townhouse that, you know, not that long ago would have been 3.25, and it's now 505. You know, to Regency, a carriage house for 900,000, and, you know, the house on Providence was like going for $1.1 million with multiple offers, and that's right today now. So the market hasn't, like, the bottom hasn't, certainly is not falling out right now.
But I think the newer construction, the things that are newer are much more in demand than the things that are 30 years old.
Yeah, I agree with
Sure.
that. Unless the 30-year-old house is like super upgraded, like, you know, improved.
What would you suggest to the seller when they're saying that they wanted to list it later because they wanted to do some upgrades and sell it for a higher price? What would you suggest?
So
Actually,
it-
to do those upgrades?
It depends specifically on the upgrade.
So I'll interrupt for a second, give your 1-minute answer to this, and then
Okay.
we'll move forward, and then we'll answer your question afterward, just to stay in time with everything. But yeah, we'll
Okay.
give you a chance to answer your question.
The bottom line, statistically speaking, and this is documented, most upgrades that sellers do don't have net a positive return. And that's the National Association of Realtors puts out every year a document that shows the return on different upgrades, and virtually every one of them is negative. So you'll sell your house for more, but not as much as you invest.
And to that point, because where we might be heading, depending on how long they take to do those upgrades, they
Right,
might
that's
shoot
another-
themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent. Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
All right. Cool. So the course material here on pages 16 and 17, there's 2 different rates that they wanted us to review that we could present to our sellers to educate and tell the local story a little better. There's what's called the activity index. Indicates how many properties are actually going under contract compared to the number of active properties on the market. It's simply actives plus pendings divided by pendings with any given time period. And if you look on page 17, this is how you can present that situation to the seller. So for example, you're preparing your CMA, you're sitting with the sellers during the month of September. You want to show them the market trend, what's happening with the activity index. So in May, the activity index for the neighborhood looked like this: 44 actives plus 64 pendings equals 108 divided by 64 pendings, 59.3 activity index. Do the same thing for July, 39.5 activity index. And then in September, 25.7 activity index. So you read a little comment below. In just 5 months, activity in this neighborhood has really cooled down considerably. More of like a hyper active pending approach to showing that. Then on page 18, you have this rate that we all know. So this is the inventory accumulation rate or the absorption rate. So this is the rate that says how long it would take for all the homes on the market to sell before supplies were exhausted if no other homes were to come on the market. Number of active homes on the market divided by the number of sales in the last 30 days. That's if you were doing it on a monthly basis. That's your absorption rate. And again, that's what determines the buyer and seller's market, that rate. So interpreted, it's interpreted by months. Meaning if we were to list your home today, it would take 1.6 months for it to sell. Right, strong seller's market, absolutely, because it's below how many months?
Well, I guess a balanced market or a normal market is between 5 and 6 months.
Right, yeah. That's good stuff. All right, great. So again, that exercise is the same thing. You show that on a monthly basis, and you can tell them how the market has slowed down, cooled off, or balanced, or whatnot. And then graphs are always good too. So I know I was talking to a lot of agents in here. I was going off door to door, and sometimes I know Bucks County Association of Realtors BCAR site has graphs that they can show. It's more from a county perspective. So sometimes it's good to have a visual for sellers because they like to see rather than just hear and look at numbers. That could be boring. So quick exercise before we get into our next panel here. It's going to take a minute. I'll spend a minute. You guys can spend a minute to figure this out. It's a calculation. Find the monthly absorption rate with those notes there. Okay? And you guys can get Matt and Debbie be our next panel here. Monthly absorption rate. Anyone got an answer?
2.5. 2.25.
2.25.
2.25.
Yeah.
I can't divide
Right.
45 by 20.
Right. So it's basically, so this is on a monthly. This is on a monthly absorption rate that we're finding. So you take 45 total homes active on the market currently in a specified area divided by the total homes sold in the last month. That's 20. So I just wanted to throw a curve to see if I would trick you with 365 and all that stuff. So 2.25. And if you guys, can you interpret that? What does that mean? 2.25, what does that mean?
So say if no new homes would come on the market, it would take 2.25 months for the inventory to sell.
Nailed it, good job. All right, great. So let's get into our next panel here. We're going to talk about approaching the sellers. Pat Straley and Deb Spalder. Come on up. I'm sorry. Ladies. All right. So with this different type of market that we're in now, maybe heading to a buyer's market. We don't know. Everyone's talking now. We are heading into a buyer's market, and we talk about the idea of pre-qualifying our listing appointments before we go on. Talk to us about how you're pre-qualifying those listing appointments. Maybe the standards that you hold yourself to. Matt, you want to go first? How do you attack that?
Well, I have a series of questions I ask, and probably you ask the same thing. Number one, why are you moving? Why do you want me out? Number two, who else are you talking to? Are you interviewing other agents? Number three is, what price do you have in mind for your home? Do you have any price for your home? And when do you, and I use this, when do you need to be settled and out of your house? So I know their level. From their questions, their answers, I get this profile. I can figure out how I'm going to tailor my presentation to them.
Okay. Just off that line of questioning, you can pretty good. Okay. D or I or
Right.
that personality
And
is.
it's funny because the question I ask is, how would you rate your home on a scale of 1 to 10? And then what would make it a 10? And from that question, I can usually tell what their personality is.
Because an S is going to talk about their house. At a D, it says it's a 10.
Okay.
D is just straightforward, it's a 10, yeah.
Mhm.
And then yes, we'll talk. Okay. And then, okay, do you have anything else to add on that?
Well, I mean, some of the questions I ask are different.
Okay.
I try to find out the motivation to sell the home. So what price they want to set and what price won't they go below. I usually ask that. And, I'm nervous being up here now, I forget. And really, what do they owe on the home? You know, I want to, because lots of times, you know, they have a lot of equity right now, so that part of it is much easier conversation than when they don't have the equity.
Okay, excellent.
But in terms of your question,
Yeah.
I have a set of questions that I use, which are the micro questions, which are the KW questions. I fill it out every single time. I answer every single question, and I use it.
Yeah. So now we shift into being honest in our listing appointments. And this is something that the book shift always wants to make sure that we're doing with our sellers. So, I mean, when I think about that, I mean, obviously it's in the material here for a reason because not all agents are honest. Can you, based off your experience in real estate, and maybe speaking to the newer agents in the room, when could an agent be dishonest at this time in a listing appointment? What have you seen in your experience? Whoever wants to go first.
Well, the hardest thing I have is, first off, you should, and I know Debbie is always be honest. But if I walk into a house that smells and the people can't smell it, and the people don't see the disorder, then that is, I need to be extremely diplomatic on how to get them to, am I right? Yeah.
I'm laughing. I just took this listing and I actually have pictures which I've showed people, and she's got like clothing to here and like in the rooms where you can't even step foot in the rooms. And you know, I've been honest with her, but I need to be a little bit more honest, like, you know, what's it gonna take for this to change, or you're never gonna be able to put your home on the market.
Yeah, I guess that's where it can be hard too. You know, it's like going back to those personality types. You don't know how to convey that important information in a way that's not going to upset them or disappoint them or offend them. I guess is the right word. Yeah. All right. Makes a lot of sense.
When I always say I'm just the deliverer of the information, I'm not. It's not my information that I'm. You know, I'm just the messenger.
Yeah.
You know, and I try to help them get removed.
Yeah.
From, if you were a buyer looking at it, let's look at what you would pay.
Right. Real quickly, can you think of a time in your past, like in your careers, where you maybe were a little too nitpicky about being honest, and it did pay off in a huge way for you that you didn't think because you brought it up, or
it did, or was it?
It did. It did. Yeah. Just wondering if anything comes to mind.
Well, I had, it was just this month or last month, I forget, and person said, I have a friend who's going to do it for me for 3%. And I said, well, I'm not your friend. You know, I said, I'm sorry, you can't, you know, I can't work for you. Within 1 week, he was on the phone saying to me, I need you to sell my house. And he broke his contract. But that was something I just had to politely say to them, that you know, that discount agent is going to show that he's a discount agent. And we were lucky in that case is that it was in my farm area, and people were saying, why didn't you list with Pat? Your house would have been, and then we did get it listed and we sold it in like 4 days.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. So this concept of leveraging the media, again, people are listening to what's happening in the national world, they're listening to friends and families, more so on what Marty was getting into, like how are you telling the local story when you get it with a seller?
So we noticed, we do it every single day, and more or less just so that we're prepared whenever we run into anyone, because I'm sure it happens to you every single day. Debbie, what's going on in the market? And when you can come back and say, well, we're at 1.4 inventory accumulation rate, people want to know what that means. And that houses, and we have those numbers at our fingertips. We look at them every day so that we're able to just roll it right off our tongues and say, whatever neighborhood we're in, if it's my farm is Southampton, but I deal in Philadelphia and Montgomery County and all of Bucks County. So for me to know all of those numbers and how many reductions there were, and a couple of weeks ago, the reductions were huge every single day. And now they're down. And we're going through an analysis right now where, how come there aren't as many reductions? Did people get smarter pricing? And I think that that's what we're seeing is agents are getting smarter and pricing it just like Marty said, a little lower. And then they'll get over asking price.
I have a lot of statistics. I don't always use them, but I always run everything on like, okay, here it is for Lower Makefield. What does it look like? And then what does it look like for all of Bucks County? You know, because I say that's your competition. And showing trends, like so showing, well, the last 3 months, this happened, but look what's happening now. You know, so that I, just in terms of being able to look at trends and being able to look at numbers, that steps them away. Like I do the individual comps, but then depending where I am with the person, either before or after, I'll talk about the overall market to make sure they're getting it.
Okay.
You know.
So you go local and like there's steps out to you in Bucks County and then you go out.
Well, but I might not need, like sometimes they're totally on track with you. You don't need to spend as much time in the overall market because they get it. Sometimes they don't get it at all.
Right. Okay. So you have to be a big leader in these listing appointments with your presentation, the questions, the purposeful questions that you're asking. How do you lead a conversation in a listing? Like, how do you bring control and focus your way? What have you learned on your years of experience that kind of?
I go right to the kitchen table and I'll be like, first of all, do you mind if I put my briefcase down or my purse down? And then usually I'm always taking pictures, so I use my phone and I'll just keep my phone. But I'll just say, do you mind if we sit down and we can review some things? So I do that first before I walk through the house.
Excellent.
And I know Debbie does this too, is to be prepared to know who you're walking into. Who is the person across the aisle from you? Are they a high C? Are they going to want to crunch all of the numbers? Or are they going to want to make a decision really quick and you're going to have to be really quick on the information that you're giving them, just so that you can mirror everything that they're saying back to you. And it all, like knowing your person going in and how to service them properly, that gives you a big advantage.
Right. Love both those answers. So last question here. So Shift stresses that in a shifting market, there's going to have to be a shift in our actions. And the idea of learning new scripts and dialogues plays a key role in this. So how are you preparing, or how did you ever prepare to commit to learning new scripts and dialogues?
Well, it's funny, I can answer that. When I was listening to Marty when he was up here and he was saying, you know, at the beginning that there's 3 questions, you know, either I can take, I used to do that
I
all.
keep hearing Barry's hand drop here. This is very.
But I used to say that all the time, and I think I've gotten sloppy in really, I mean, I used to do role play every day for 5 years, and I stopped doing that.
What did that look like, for example? The role play every day?
So what it looked like is I had a different role play partner every day, and we call each other on the phone, and we'd say, you know, this is the script I want to work on, and we practice. And every day I'd have a different person, so I want people who are reliable and someone who's not gonna be chit chatty with me the whole time. And really doing that, and I had some role play partners that were brand new. And I had some that were these amazing agents, and I got things out of regardless of who I was working with. I had, it was a really good experience.
So I am at 6:30 in the morning, every morning on a live call called Early Birds. And we script practice. And let me tell you, they've turned into my friends now too. And so they beat me up. They don't like the way I say water. But, that's, what are you going to do? But like tomorrow when we get on, there'll be some kind of they'll give us some problem. And what I'll have to do is get to the root of it just by asking questions. And so it, wakes me up in the morning and I'm able to do that. However, I listen, I learn more from other people than I think my skills perfected. However, what it has given me is sometimes I'm talking to people and someone will say something to me and something will fall out of my mouth. And I'm like, where'd that come from? That was pretty good. I said that. But it's all from the practice. It's all from the practice.
And the repetition.
Mm-hmm.
And the repetition.
And the confidence. You feel like, okay, I can do this.
So that's the Early Birds. Which
Early
is-
Birds. It's
So if
on-
someone wanted to join that, it's 6:30 every morning, Monday to Friday?
On Clubhouse.
Clubhouse, yeah.
Yeah.
That-
So you don't
I
even
think
have to
that,
put
right?
makeup on. You don't even have to get out of bed. You can just turn it on. It's good.
Okay.
And you can listen and not step up. I step up because I want to.
Yeah.
Wendy?
So I also want to say that there's another script that we know of, and it's called Script Jedi, and you go to scriptjedi.com. It's at 8:30 in the morning, so maybe some people can't get up at 6:30 and go to Clubhouse. It's a Zoom call. You go on, they'll give you what you're going to role play, and then they kind of break you into little groups. So that you can role play with each other. I know a couple people that have done it at KW Langmore or Newtown. So it's scriptsjedi.com and it's at 8:30 every morning. So if you can't get up at 6:30 and do Early Birds, it's a great, another way to role play scripts.
Yeah, and it's also going on the pivot shift at 8 o'clock in the morning too. And, you can just have that on. And they talk about something that's timely all of the time. And they've been talking about these price reductions for about, 2 months now?
Yeah. Good stuff, ladies. Well,
Okay.
good job. Thank you very much. All right. About 20 minutes left of material here. Okay. All right. So we'll dive more into getting the price right. So they talk about in Tactics 7, this idea of the window of the opportunity. And the window of the opportunity is basically kind of like that first impression. And I wanted to read a couple sentences here on page 137 of this book to kind of paint a picture of what that means. So if any agent or buyer believes that a house is poorly priced, it loses its opportunity and doesn't draw their attention. Basically, it gets written off from the beginning. First impressions are the original pictures framed in the mind and heart. They are usually lasting ones. It is the best marketing message a seller can send. We're priced right and serious to sell. That makes sense? Anyone have any comments on that? The first impression for a house, and I heard it a couple times. It's almost pricing a home below the comps to sort of price ahead of the market. I think that's like the winning strategy. And that would be that amazing first impression. These buyers are way too smart, right? Buyers always want a deal. They always want a deal. And I don't know if the sellers, they come to us and they say, well, you're going to make it happen. The deal's going to, no, the market's going to make it happen. And all I can do is convey the market stats. Window of opportunity. And then help them self-discover. Looking at all the comparables here in the MLS for your neighborhood, how much would you be willing to pay for your house if you were a buyer today? Given what I've shown you about the market, what do you think your house will sell for? So Shift also talks about this concept of the tale of the two markets. You're either in the market or you're out of the market. So this is what it looks like for a seller's market. The y-axis is the price versus the comps, and then the x-axis is the condition of the homes. So for example, if your home is, let's say your home's right here as far as condition, in a seller's market, you're pretty good to price it pretty high, right? So you're still in the market. You have a wide range of pricing it right. It's always easier in a seller's market to get listings. You didn't have to really argue price so much. Now, in a buyer's market, the zone is a lot smaller, as we say. So say, for example, the condition's right here, and they want to price it here, you're out of market. So the curve would have to look something like this in order to be in the market. Everyone following along with that? It's pretty much letting them know there's two types of market. You're in or you're out of the market. And then you eventually get to three types of zones, where you're in the market, you're in no man's land, or you're out of the market. So no man's land is like this zone where sellers and even agents think that they're priced right because they're getting showings, but there's no offers. It's almost like they feel like they're in here, but really they're right here. They're in no man's land. I mean, they're getting interest, but just no offers. I think as of right now, and what we're seeing, it's homes, there's not so many overpriced listings on the market right now. I mean, there's price reductions. It's just not, we're just not in that big buyer's market to really judge. Because I was thinking about doing an exercise where we could find listings that are either in these three categories. It was just a hard one for me to do, in all honesty. It's a hard one to find. Okay, so we know this one, seller's market versus buyer market. Said it earlier, seller's market, there's more buyers, and then in a buyer's market, there's more sellers. Supply and demand. All right. So when we look at that and we think of the focus in question, how can you use MLS statistics to explain the effects of supply and demand in your market? If we're just showing supply and demand, what's the one way or two ways or three ways we can do that based off everything we went over today? Just showing off supply and demand. Well, yeah. So absorption rate is really that's the underlying formula of showing whether we're in a buyer's market or a seller's market. 100%. Okay. All right. So they also talk about this concept of don't chase the market. Not chasing the market is basically is this concept of making sure you price your listings ahead, what we had talked about earlier. Pricing it below the market value. Always important to give them the local stats, right? So now we're going to get into manager listings. So most of you in this room were in the last shift with the buyer's market. That happened from like 07 to 11. So some of you in this room have never experienced what it's like to work for a seller with those homes that sit on the market for more than 3 weeks, more than 5 weeks, 6, even close to a year. I mean, on the handout that I gave you, there's, oh my goodness. Oh, no, it wasn't on this handout. I'm sorry. However, there's so many more things that you got to do. You got to follow up with them with the stats. You got to follow with them how many hits we're getting on the marketing site, what the feedback is. Hey, it's been 3-5 days since I haven't heard from you. What other things are you doing to get my home sold? So there's more continuous conversations that need to be had. And of course, you got to increase the frequency and unique time opening of the houses. You got to send your sellers regular market information and updates.
And then with overpriced listings, it's important to get price reductions too. So I want to take an activity break here. If we could team up, maybe use three, you guys can talk, and then Larry, you guys. Here's the question I want to ask you guys. What are the advantages of taking an overpriced listing? What are the disadvantages of taking an overpriced listing? So three minutes. Let's go through that.
Really, but I mean, you have to go back to 2000, 7, 8, 9.
To get a sale. And in this market,
Doesn't matter to me. It's a waste of
all
time
those
and
insurance
energy.
agents,
Yeah,
It's like
a
a
very
drain.
small percentage.
It is a total drain.
But if you're not busy,
Disadvantage.
which I'm not at the moment,
Okay.
I would,
Your sign sits
but
out
I
there,
would
neighbors,
really
here's
lay
something
down
that's
my
for sale.
golden rule ahead of time.
Sell it, sell it.
We don't have
Yeah.
a
Sell it, plug your
reason.
phone up.
You have to, you've got to agree prices. What I'm suggesting,
And they're not,
It's
it's not,
not.
the need,
you know, so just on the back of my list for a week or two. But if I was really overpriced, then I probably
Well,
would.
we're not in, as Larry said, we're not at a point
No.
yet. It's not that kind of a market where you can, you say, oh my God, this is gonna be a nightmare for the next 6 months.
Well, plus the other thing that's so if you just
I mean, you want all your listeners around, right? I mean, it's overpriced listing, one of the advantages of would they have a listing.
Right.
Market.
Yeah, yeah. And you market it, yeah.
Your name.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword, because it doesn't help you to have to sell the house.
Something doesn't sell.
About 6 months.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like the.
especially now, coming out of the kind of market
Now we lowered it to
we've been in, because
No,
I don't think
and it's still
the
not,
general
and I'm,
public.
but that's why I was like, one owner is actually like, oh, there's so much.
Changing.
And I think they're changing.
I'm new to this, I don't even know what I'm
In
doing.
my ear.
So, that's gonna be fun.
So,
Yeah, well, it's sad to me that it, happened in May.
it was like
Some people are saying it happened in Father's
6
Day,
days.
but I felt that shift in May.
I know, I still see an awful lot of multiple offers. I mean, I
Oh,
still
yeah.
see
I just said,
a ton of multiple offers.
But instead of selling 40, it's selling.
sometimes you cannot.
Which we know.
And you probably.
Maybe, like, it's not 15 offers, it's 3,
Right.
but there's still more than one. And many places still only have one.
Right.
So,
My
I mean,
guess
it's,
is your home not really up.
Yeah, I don't see the sky.
I don't either.
We're at.
no, no, no,
They
no.
don't have-
I don't think.
Right.
we're
And
actually
it's either
talking
house
about
or one that is
some things.
Right,
We
right.
need more updating. And it's assured
Some
that
other
unfortunately,
economic shock.
those buyers were
Yeah.
there to sell it, but
Yeah.
now-
Yeah.
So they're back in a hole.
Right.
It's gonna change.
That's the inventory is just outrageously, and that is change.
And that's what I actually looked at, yeah. They were saying, okay,
All right.
I don't have it, something happened.
We all good?
All
right. So advantages of taking an overpriced listing. What did you guys come up with? Advantages of taking an overpriced listing.
You have a list.
Opportunity.
Okay.
Market,
Right?
I just want to add this, because last month I
Sure.
went to a class and Larry said something, and he said like, I never lose a listing on price. And I've been having that mentality now, and I see I'm much more aggressive than before. So like, I'd rather have an overpriced listing than not to have the listing.
Okay.
Well, I learned early on, you can't get a price reduction on a listing you don't have.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So true. Any other advantages? Taking an overpriced listing? Sometimes you're gonna have to. It's gonna be a great referral. It's gonna be for a close family member, for a close friend, loyal database person, so you're gonna have to take the times, even when you're in a buyer's market too. Yeah. Cool. Disadvantages of taking an overpriced listing.
Hassle.
Yeah, I was saying, it's a drain of time and energy.
Aggravation.
It's hard when they're close personal friends and your whole group is asking, why isn't it sold yet?
Yeah.
Why isn't it sold yet? What are you doing? Why didn't you get this done yet?
You sit in a whole group of friends and you're representing one of the friends and
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, that's rough.
sure.
Upset sellers.
And it's hard.
Constantly calling you and asking why the neighbors sold
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, everybody else is did, and then you gotta go through that whole try not explanation, let me get you into the martini.
So 154, let me geek out again. 154 to 155, they talk about this debate here. Overpriced properties can be a liability in terms of time, money, and reputation. Others see listings as a marketing opportunity that shouldn't be ignored. Many top agents reported that they could reasonably expect to net 2 buyers from a well-marketed home. Here's the closer in this that Gary says. We do believe that regardless of which approach you choose, you fundamentally always want a motivated seller. And if you think back to that core model of leads, listings, leverage, listings will be the high leverage maximum opportunity for any real estate agent. So at the end of the day, if it's overpriced, yeah, some would argue and some would say, look, this is liability in terms of time, money, and reputation. However, going after listings will never be bad for your business at all times. So pretty much what I took away from that chapter there. All right, great. Great participation, guys. Thank you. Then when we get the price reductions, I think when you get that overpriced listing, I think it's good to set the expectations of what it's going to look like. I see you guys shaking your head. I'm sure you guys probably do that. You're like, all right, we know if we get this, if they agree to this price, then we got to set the expectations of what those reductions look like. On page 43 of the handout is pretty much the NAR standard for their research on when price reductions need to be done. I have it on the board here as well. So if there's 10 showings with no offer, there's a price reduction that's needed. If there's 2 to 3 weeks with no showing, there's also a price reduction that's needed. And then you think about the percentage of price reduction. 10 to 12 showings with comments equals 5% lower price. You got to lower the price by 5%. Again, that's you get 10 to 12 showings with comments, 5% lower price. Now, if you get 10 to 12 showings with no offers, it's still 5% lower price. No showings, 10% lower price. Almost the standard.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add.
Yeah, please.
Unless you're bringing the price down enough for a new set of eyes, new set of buyers, I think if you accept the price reduction for, let's say, $10,000 or $20,000, you're putting the monkey back on you, and it's not going to make any difference. So you have a home on the market for $590,000 and you bring it to $570. Doesn't really change the audience.
Right, because people search in different brackets. You got to, okay, I love
So I think
that.
your 5% is a minimum.
Okay, yes, right. That's it. Thank you for, yeah.
Because then the seller says, well, I gave you a price reduction.
Right.
And you still didn't sell that.
Right.
So it's almost like I wouldn't even take the price reduction unless it's 5%.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's great. So this, that is a minimum, I would agree with you. 5% at a very minimum standard that you lower the price. However, you want to make a big splash because you want to attract more buyers in a bigger, that are searching in a different price range pool. That's pretty, I'm listening, right? Good. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, great. Seller concessions. And when we're thinking about a buyer's market, so I wasn't in the market around that time when it was a buyer's market, but I heard this idea and this concept of the seller giving credits to lower down the interest rate, the mortgage interest rate. Have you guys ever, for the experienced ones in the room? Okay. So does anyone want to tell a story or pretty much educate us in the room how that works? And is that something that we could see in the future? I'm just curious.
I mean, let's say someone has an old roof and, they feel that they need a roof. They could put $15,000 at settlement that they'll put towards a roof.
Yeah, or you can, the seller could offer some amount of dollars towards the buyer paying down their loan rate.
Yeah.
But basically, sellers contributing to buy down the rate.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if you could market that to like your
Sure.
database or something. Ways to buy down your your mortgage interest rate.
When rates were like
It's
going
high.
back a while ago, when rates were really crazy high, builders would offer that as a, you know,
Use
as a
their mortgage company.
concession. They, you know, that's when rates were like 13 and 14%. They, you know, they would, you know, they would pay to buy the rate down to whatever, 11, which at the time sounded good.
So the one, I got a question from my daughter, last week. She said, Mom, there's an assumable mortgage on this. They're advertising, so I think the VA and the FHA, and those rates are low. So if, you know, if,
Assumables.
yeah, they can be assumed. If it's assumable, it's a good marketing
Yeah.
thing for the seller.
Has anyone heard that from Walmart?
Probably. The VA only limit to.
Yeah, I don't,
FHA maybe.
yeah, I don't remember. FHA is definitely assumable. Some, and you have to qualify also.
Have any of you heard any of that happening? Like any assumed?
I saw one advertised not that long ago.
I saw one advertised,
Yeah.
I mean, just,
but I was like, yeah, this is kind of weird.
it just,
Yeah.
I mean,
I think VA is assumed.
that's what I thought.
You have to be
But
a
only
VA
by
resident.
VA.
I'm
No?
not positive about that, but I thought it was I mean, I'm not positive. I thought it was just the VA loan that was assumable. But one was advertised in our market not that, I mean, recently.
Yeah. All right.
And it was low. It was like relative to where rates are today, it was like a 2.75, you know, assumable
Mhm.
mortgage.
Of course, you're going to have a buyer that has money to put down.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right. Great. So this was good getting a lot of experienced agents in a room to share their ideas. So we learned some good strategies today. I think the bottom line is that knowledge is power in a shifting market, and you gotta let the numbers do all the heavy lifting in your conversations. That was my takeaways in talking with the panelists today. And was there any takeaways that you guys had or ahas that you had from today? All right. Great. Good stuff. All right.
Can
Uh,
I
oh.
ask you a little maybe stupid question?
No.
Is the seller concessions are the same as the seller credits or not? Or this is something that has been offered at the leasing, not at the actual?
The concessions would be the same as the seller credit for the most part. It's just, for the sake of this coursework, it was showing creative ideas of how to give out the concession in the buyer's market.
So basically already advertising some kind of seller's concessions.
Yeah.
Before you even have a buyer.
Right, correct.
Or the buyer can ask for a concession.
Yeah,
The seller
that's,
doesn't have to offer it, the buyer can ask for it.
okay, but that's a part of the offer. I just wanted to make sure. It's the same thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for attending, guys. And just so you know, I'm on a journey. I want to get better and better at presenting. And if you can, I would like for you, if you can go to kwueval.com and fill out a survey. And I'm on a journey. I want to get more familiar with the Keller Williams material. I want to be a better presenter. I want to lead a lot better in the market center here. So if you can, those evaluations, if you can do that, that'd be awesome. And it's all electronic and it'll get submitted to KWRI. And yeah, so that's kwueval.com. Your Greater PA region is going to ask one of those questions, and this class is called Shift Business by the Book.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Wes.
thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, all right. Thank you so much for the participation, guys.
Yeah, no problem.
And these handouts have great scripts on the back.
Make sure you don't have to be.
Thanks, Marty. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I will.
Thank you.
I'll call you then. Thank you.
See you guys.
All right, guys.
See ya.
I'm sorry? The truth is, I have
You
a
too.
good friend of mine. has been the same rental for 14 years and the landlord's selling it. And she's only been paying